Welcome into the Hang Time Podcast. Sekou Smith here in Atlanta, back in the seat. I have a doctor's note, literally, for my excused absence for the past few podcasts. Appreciate my man John Schumann and Sean Powell holding it down here. John Hartzell, as always, taking care of business. Shu, I'm not going to waste your time or anybody else's time. The NBA offseason, wild and crazy as ever, is already rolling. A flurry of activity on the first day of free agency, the first official day. And the action is still rolling. People know that by now that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are going to Brooklyn, as has been rumored. The other major domino, however, has not fallen yet. Kawhi Leonard has not made his choice, as is probably the most Kawhi Leonard thing to do, Shu. But Hassan Whiteside is reportedly on his way to Portland in a very interesting deal that is kind of indicative, Shu, of just all of the changing nature of the league right away here into free agency. Were you blown away by any of this stuff, or was it kind of what you expected based on the rumors we'd been hearing about, in terms of the major players and where they might be ending up?
A couple of things have really shocked me, and we can get into them more, but the Golden State sort of pivoting and giving D'Angelo Russell a max contract in a sign and trade deal with Brooklyn, basically trying to get anything they can out of Kevin Durant, because the losing Kevin Durant doesn't give them any additional cap space. But D'Angelo Russell just doesn't seem like a Golden State Warriors kind of player. Doesn't fit very well with that team at all. So that one was kind of crazy, because we had been hearing about him possibly going to Minnesota, where Minnesota would have to have created or had to have unloaded some salary for that to happen. But that one was kind of stunning to me. This Heat Blazers trade is kind of stunning to me in that the Heat, in an effort to get under the hard cap, which they will be under in working a sign and trade deal for Jimmy Butler, were somehow able to dump Hassan Whiteside's contract before they found a taker for Goran Dragic, which is kind of amazing just to think about that. And there was all this sort of late Sunday night issues with a potential trade or Dallas getting involved in this sort of Philadelphia, Miami, Jimmy Butler action, where they apparently Miami thought they were trading Goran Dragic to Dallas, but Dallas thought they were getting two other guys, and that sort of fell apart. So Miami's still sort of scrambling to find takers for salary, and dumping Whiteside's contract to Portland and getting two contracts that don't add up to the same amount of money in return helps them get towards that Jimmy Butler trade coming through. But the fact that Portland took that, I understand they need a placeholder for Yusuf Nurkic, but the fact
plus Enes Kanter is not.
Yeah, he's a free agent, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But Hassan Whiteside isn't exactly a sure thing to hold it down for Nurkic.
But I guess if you're Portland, you're betting on his having leadership like Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, having those guys in place. Maybe you get him to play in what's essentially a contract year for him.
Yeah.
Gets the best out of him. I get it. But, I think, Shu, if you look at just the litany of deals,
it's just
there's so much to go on right out the gate in free agency.
So many guys to change teams. I'm looking at my free agent list, and I have them sort of color-coded, where it's players that are staying are in black and players that are going to a new team are in red, and it's mostly red. So it's it's almost – I'd say just 80% of the guys that have agreed to deals as we speak in the middle of the day on July 1st are going to new teams. They're not staying at home. Obviously, Klay Thompson, Tobias Harris, the two biggest guys and Chris Middleton are the three biggest guys that are staying where they're at.
So far, we don't know about Kawhi Leonard again. We're recording this before Kawhi has made his decision to either stay with Toronto on whatever deal he, would prefer, or if he's going to leave and go elsewhere. And
that's going to be fascinating because, Toronto, I think, is just, they're going to stay. But the fact that the Clippers and Lakers are waiting for Kawhi Leonard, and in waiting for Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers sort of lost the ability to add a second star. They had the cap space perhaps to add additional impact player with Leonard, but basically all those players are gone. And then the Lakers are still sitting there with just three guys on their roster. It's LeBron James, Anthony Davis and Kyle Kuzma, and that's it.
I like the foundation, though. I mean, I like
sure. But like, man, they're going to have a hard time filling out that roster. I mean, there's still some decent players left, but there are a lot of teams, sort of good teams right now as they stand, that still need some depth.
Yeah.
You know, Boston is one of those. The Warriors are one of those. The Rockets are one of those, although they're bringing back.
Well, slow down, Shu. Let me slow down. Let me slow you down, and
All right.
let's kind of pick apart some of these things in particular. You mentioned Boston. They lose Al Horford. They lose Kyrie, obviously. Al Horford goes to Philly, goes to a division rival and a team that's been trying to get past you if you're Boston the past few years. Now you've got the guy who was the backbone and anchor of your team and your defense especially, side by side with Joel Embiid now instead of battling him. And you got Kemba Walker essentially in the place of Kyrie Irving. Does Boston look better or worse to you now? You lose Aaron Baines as well in a trade. You know, you send him out. I mean,
yeah, losing Horford and Baines is huge. I mean, those two guys are just a huge part of their defense. And, I mean, what do they have up front? I mean, I assume that they start, you know, Walker, Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum at the 4, but that's not – you don't have any sort of size options really.
I guess Robert Williams could be your theoretically, but I don't know.
Yeah, Robert Williams theoretically right now is your starting center, or Daniel Tice, who's a restricted free agent who they still, you know, could retain. Marcus Morris is out there as a free agent, not necessarily coming back. So up front, they're extremely thin. I would see Kevon Looney as a possible target for them because of the Warriors being now so restricted in how much they can spend with the sign and trade deal for D'Angelo Russell. It's going to be hard for the Warriors to retain Looney.
I know, but I would say that people are forgetting the Warriors had another young big man that looked good before he got injured this past season in Jones.
Yeah, but then he was healthy at the end, and he wasn't really playing. He was basically, I think, their 4th string center.
Well, he's been out for so long. I don't know that you could have reinserted him in it. But let's do this, Shu. Let me do it like this. I'm going to run down the team, and you tell me better, worse, or same. How about that?
All right, let's go.
Because I'm very curious how the balance of power shifts, not just from one side of the league to the other, but in terms of the conferences. So I'm going to start. We talked about Boston and Brooklyn, obviously. This is going to hit a sore spot for a lot of people you probably know. But what about the Knicks? I mean,
I mean, they might be slightly better, but I still see them possibly as the worst team in the league again. I mean, they have nothing defensively. You know, even these guys they've added, Randall, Portis, Bullock maybe is a decent defender, but Taj Gibson a decent defender, but you know, nearing the end of his career, Wayne Ellington, you know, and then it's all their young guys. That spells, you know, bottom 3 defense to me. And then offensively, I mean, Randall is nice, but like they have little sort of off the dribble with that team. I just see them as possibly, again, the worst team in the league.
But they're betting on. I
don't know what they're
betting on guys who are maybe overlooked or maybe I don't want to say underrated because I don't think it's that. I think they're betting on, hey, if we do this slow methodical process like everybody else has done that's tried it, or like other teams that have tried this same method, that maybe we hit on a couple of these guys and they end up being better than people thought as they bide their time to make a splash. You know, with some bigger. That's what I'm looking at, the length of the deals, and it makes sense to me if you're the Knicks and you can't get any big name guys to take your money, and that's clearly what happened. Kyrie, Durant, Kawhi, the big name free agents, the Class A free agent, like the real game changer, face of your franchise free agents, clearly were not interested in going to play for the Knicks.
Yeah, but the other thing they could have done with cap space is taken on somebody's bad contract for a year or two and then gotten additional assets and they've gotten drafted.
They got their own bad contracts to worry about.
No, they don't. They have nothing. They really had nothing on their books. They had
to get rid. I'm saying they had to get rid of their own bad contracts. They got rid of Hardaway's deal. I mean,
right?
It wasn't huge in terms of a max deal.
They're in this holding pattern. Like for me, when I look at the Knicks, I see, okay, let's see what RJ Barrett can do. Let's see what Kevin Knox, if he can recover from a pretty bad rookie season. Let's see if there's any salvaging Frank Ntilikina, and obviously let Mitchell Robinson develop. And so you have these young guys. I think you put yourself on a timeline for 3 to 5 years down the road. And in that time, you can acquire more assets by using the cap space you had to take on somebody's bad contract and take a pick or two along with that bad contract. Something that Brooklyn did while they were rebuilding, something that Philadelphia did, during the process. Other teams have done. You take on a bad contract, you get a pick with it, and then you have more assets rather than spending your cap space on veterans that, like Wayne Ellington, okay, he's a good shooter, but you're not going to develop him into anything better than he already is. Same thing with Taj Gibson. Bobby Portis, same thing. I just don't, I think there are better ways to use your cap space. And I think that's, and so they've sort of used up all their space. You don't have enough space to say take on Dragic if Miami was looking to get rid of dump that contract.
So worse is what you're saying for the Knicks.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I'm excited about R.J. Barrett. I really am, and we'll see if Knox can get better and Robinson can block as many shots without fouling so often.
Right.
But yeah, let's move on.
Sixers better or worse?
That's a good question.
I think less talented, but better chemistry, perhaps.
Maybe they just don't have as much off. Like who's running pick and rolls for this team? Ben Simmons is not a pick and roll guard. He can't shoot. Jimmy Butler was their pick and roll guy. I love Josh Richardson. Like getting Josh Richardson in that deal is a good move, and they're going to be incredible defensively. Yeah. Incredible. Simmons, Richardson, Harris, Horford, and Embiid. They can have Horford or Embiid on the floor at all times. It's like, with Houston, you have Chris Paul or James Harden running your offense at all times. Well, right. With Philadelphia, you have Al Horford or Joel Embiid anchoring your defense at all times, and they will stagger their minutes. So that's the case. Offensively, it'll be interesting. Like, how is it going to work offensively? I guess Tobias Harris is going to be asked to handle the ball more often. And I guess with that contract, he better be able
to handle the ball and a lot of other stuff for.
Yeah, whereas Richardson,
$180 million.
Yeah, Richardson's not much of a creator. I think he's a terrific two-way player. I just don't know where the juice is off the dribble with this team. And maybe it's Tobias Harris, and then obviously depth remains an issue. Although the biggest depth issue, as we saw in the playoffs, was what happened when Embiid left the floor. Well, now you have Horford in that case, and I think that obviously you don't have to worry about Boban Marjanovic minutes or Greg Monroe minutes when Embiid comes off the floor. Yeah. You have Horford to take those minutes, but still depth on the wings and in the backcourt is an issue. Retaining James Edis would be really, really important. He was really good in the playoffs, so we'll see going forward. But I can't imagine them not being the best defensive team in the league if all those guys are healthy for most of the season.
We're going to give the champs, the Toronto Raptors, a pass until we know what Kawhi does. And plus, they're still popping champagne, so they get a break. We'll save them for another date. I'm skipping Chicago, Cleveland, and I want to skip Detroit even in terms of better or worse, because I don't know that they're teams that have done anything significant enough to their DNA between the draft and now the start of free agency to really push the needle in either direction.
Chicago's interesting. I'll say just one thing. Thaddeus Young is a nice little piece that should fit well both alongside Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter Jr. So that's like a nice little 3-man, big man rotation that I like. And I like that.
In 2 years, I would be more inclined to feel better about it. But I right now, Carter didn't even finish his rookie season.
Yeah.
Markkanen didn't play a whole season. I have a hard time getting excited right now about – No, I mean, I don't mean that in any disrespect to the Bulls, but I'm saying in a league where teams are making moves and instantly upgrading their rosters to compete in a championship window that is wide open now, clearly because of what went down with Golden State this year. Chicago's not on my radar of teams that I feel like is really locked in and doing something. But in that division, Indiana gets Malcolm Brogdon. I've seen a lot of people talking like that's the big game-changing move that pushes Indiana with Victor Oladipo coming back into the realm of legitimate Eastern Conference contenders. They lost Bogdanovich. Am I missing something in not understanding why people are so fired up about Indiana elevating themselves?
That's a good question. So they lost three starters: Collison, Bogdanovich, Thaddeus Young, and Corey Joseph, who I think was an important reserve for them. I think now they're counting on maybe Aaron Holiday to be their backup point guard, and maybe he's ready for that. So you have Brogdon, Oladipo, Jeremy Lamb. The question is if they're going to try to play Sabonis and Turner together. Like, I sort of penciled in Sabonis as their starting power forward with TJ Warren coming off the bench.
Right.
Because otherwise, I don't know, like, he's still going to have Sabonis play backup to Turner and try not to. And that'll be the big question if those two guys can play together. But I love Brogdon. The Oladipo, we don't know when he's going to be back, but they're very good. Like, I don't know if they're better than they were last year, because I still like Thaddeus Young was an important piece for them. Bogdanovich was an important piece for them.
Yeah.
Collison and Joseph were a solid point guard rotation. So
Collison retires, obviously. Are you sure that Malcolm Brogdon I know people have been talking about him like he's some potential all-star caliber player. I think he's really good, but I don't know that I felt like he's some linchpin to a team being a contender or not.
He gives them a little bit more off the dribble than Collison, like a little bit more juice, a little more burst off the dribble than Collison and Joseph, and obviously a very good defender and a very good shooter off the catch. So I think he fits well with Oladipo. I like it. I do. And Jeremy Lamb at a reasonable contract too is a good addition just to give them depth. They we still got to see what happens with Wesley Matthews, but
right.
They look pretty good too deep, especially when you think that Sabonis and Turner can share the center minutes and you don't have to worry about the rookie center. I won't pronounce his name correctly if I tried.
Big Georgian is
Goga.
Zaza Jr., baby. That's what I call him.
So I think they're set up to be maybe around the same level as they were last year, obviously depending on Oladipo and when he returns, and then how good he is when he.
You mentioned Jeremy Lamb on what was the term you used for his contract?
Reasonable.
We're gonna have. I'm gonna write this down now. John Hartzell, make sure you write it down. We're gonna argue later this summer. When the days are slower and there's not as much going on, we're gonna have an argument and run down the list of what's a reasonable contract for guys and what's unreasonable. And I think
an unreasonable right now if you want to talk about it.
No, I don't want to talk about it now, but I want to talk about it later this summer. We have more time.
There's a guy that the Sacramento Kings re-signed that
Don't worry, we'll get to the Kings. But we're going to have a nice, long, friendly debate about what's reasonable and what's not. And we're going to call it the John Lure Special. Hang Time Podcast Special. The John Lure Hang Time Podcast Special. Someday, off in the next few months, when there's, less action flying around, we will argue vigorously about what's a reasonable and an unreasonable contract in the NBA today. The Bucks, out of respect for our producer, who's probably still licking his wounds after his boys bowed out to the Raptors in the playoffs. The Bucks, do you think they're better, worse, or the same?
They lost Brogdon, so I think they're a little worse. But of course, Giannis Antetokounmpo just gets better every single season. So I think they did what they had to do to sort of stay competitive. That's somebody said it's like overachieving is a tough thing to deal with, because now you've got to pay players that a certain amount of money that you wouldn't have necessarily thought they were worth a year ago. But, you've become the number one team in the East, and now Brook Lopez has got to get paid. Chris Middleton's got to get paid. I think a lot will depend on Pat Connaughton stepping into a bigger role with Brogdon gone.
DJ Wilson.
Yeah, same thing with DiVincenzo.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys are going to have to play a little bit more. And so those three guys, so we'll see.
This is when you earn your player development money too, similar to what I think Denver has done the past couple of years.
Yes, a great point. Like Connaughton was a pleasant surprise last year, and they got him coming back on a cheap deal. He'll have to get paid next year if he steps into a bigger role and does so well. And so a lot depends on him, but you got to love the fact that they have Brook and Robin Lopez on the same team. How could that's a disaster waiting to happen. That is they won the game within the game in free agency by pairing Brook.
Last time they played on the same team was in college.
They got to now find the schedule makers to give them a couple of off days around their trip to Orlando, so that those guys can spend some extra time in Disney World and all will be good with the Bucks.
The Southeast Division doesn't have as many teams that I think are going to be playoff factors, but they've got some interesting teams. Atlanta's going to be very interesting this year with their young core, see how they grow and develop. Miami with Jimmy Butler is going to be very interesting. Orlando has spent some cash to keep some of their guys in the fold.
That's a tough situation where
they're almost trapped.
They made the playoffs and they got to pay Vucevic. Do they take a step backward by letting Vucevic and Terrence Ross or one of the other walk, or do they try to keep moving forward? But then now you're paying these guys a lot of money, and you've got a ton of money committed, and you've sort of kept Mo Bamba sort of on ice a little bit by re-signing Vucevic and adding even Al-Farouq Aminu to that front line.
That was the surprising one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because they have Isaac and Bamba around Vucevic and Gordon, who should be is more of a 4 than a 3.
Right.
So it seems like a really crowded, and even their first round pick is a big man too. Okiki, I think his name is.
Yeah, obviously he's not going to be.
He's not going to play, but now he's playing. He's now, as far as the 4/5, he's now behind Isaac, Aminu, Vucevic, Bamba, and even Gordon. When you can,
he's more of a. I watched him in high school. Actually, he went to Westlake High School here in Atlanta. He's more of a 3 to me at the NBA level than he is a 4. To be honest with you, he can actually shoot it from beyond the 3-point line already. We'll see how he comes back from that torn ACL, but he's a little more versatile in terms of being able to face, having a face-up game on offense and being a little bit craftier than people might think. I thought Al-Farouq was interesting in that if you're looking at what you need in Orlando, he didn't seem like he fit a real need.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's an interest. I like him as a player.
Yeah,
and I think he's a loss for Portland. But yeah, it's a weird fit. Like it seems, and I think there's a couple of them of these deals where it's like, okay, good player, reasonable contract, but who's he getting in the way of now going forward?
Do we go ahead and administer last rites to the Hornets now that Kemba's gone? He was the one reason we had to feel good about the Hornets. And
they buried their own grave with the contracts they gave out to.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Batum, Marvin Williams, Biyombo, who was
Zeller.
a trade for Zeller's contract I don't think is that bad, but
it's not that it's that bad, but I'm saying if you add all those deals up, as to why you can't keep Kemba, and it's almost like it's Kemba's fault, he's getting the max. Well, no, it's not. It's the team has to prepare itself for the inevitable when you have a player of that caliber. 3 and 4 years out, basically, what has to be done to make sure you take care of a guy who's the face of your franchise, and it's like they didn't prepare for it.
See, one of those contracts right there is what the Knicks could have done with cap space.
Yeah.
Say, okay, we'll take Michael Kidd-Gilchrist's $13 million contract if you send us a pick. Now, I don't know what the Hornets were willing to do to get off one of those contracts, like what kind of picks they were willing to trade. The problem now is that they're probably going to have a lottery pick next year, and so maybe they don't want to trade next year's pick because
they smashed all these lottery picks.
Yeah, it could be a good pick.
There are certain teams, that I don't think should want to touch lottery picks given their track record. Seriously, some of these teams should be running away from lottery picks. Try a different avenue, because if you go 1 for 7 in your last 8 lottery picks,
but you never know.
Want to try something else.
You never know, and teams moved up. The Lakers and Pelicans both moved up from to mid to low lottery all the way to the top of the draft in this new lottery system. So you gotta, even if you're a team like Charlotte, who won't be terrible, they still have a rotation, a starting lineup of Rozier, Batum, Marvin Williams, Cody Zeller, maybe Miles Bridges at the small forward. I mean, they won't be terrible, but they, with their pick, they could certainly move up.
They're going to be tough to watch, and it's going to be an interesting experiment watching Terry Rozier, who's wanted to be a starting point guard and wanted his own team. Well, he's got one now, but it's not the job that he was probably hoping for in Boston.
Yeah, I mean, they'll have a ton of cap space next year. It's just who's going to want to go there, and it's not a great free agent class in the first place. So maybe next year they're a team that takes on somebody else's contract in an effort to get more assets.
For the sake of everyone's mental health in and around the DMV, I'm just going to scuttle the Wizards to the side right now. I don't even like talking about them. I hate it for Bradley Beal, who I was hoping for his sake would be a part of some movement just to get him to a place where he could maximize his abilities during the physical prime of his career, which may or may not happen, obviously, in Washington, given all they've got going on. And the Miami Heat, we talked about some of the players that they're parting ways with to get some things done to get Jimmy Butler. Does Miami strike you like they do Minshew as a team that's kind of stuck in a purgatory, really, where they want to be good, they know the formula to be good and above average, but they're strapped right now with some things that are just limiting that opportunity because they don't have great talent on their roster. They got really good players and some solid players, but they gave up one in Josh Richardson, who had the potential to be more than what he is. They gave up another in Hassan Whiteside, who they had to give up because he's come nowhere close to playing up to what the investment, was that they made in him. How do you fight your way out of this if you're the Heat?
Well, first of all, give them credit for finding a way to add Butler, given their cap situation. Give Andy Ellsberg a ton of credit for getting.
It is Miami. Let's not forget. I mean,
true, but Josh Richardson's really good. So that's a tough. I mean, if you could have had Butler and Richardson as your wings, that's I like that a lot more. I still really like Bam Adebayo, and this will be his year to really take a step forward. Whiteside is now out of the way. There's no, hey, we got to start Hassan Whiteside because he's getting paid all this money, and if we don't start him, we might lose him completely. He might just become completely disengaged. And so it is time for Bam Adebayo to really flourish. I think he could be an impact center on both ends of the floor. He's really skilled, really athletic, pretty smart. He's a guy that they'll let dribble the ball up the floor on occasion and get them into their offense or take the ball to the basket. So it's a lot is on him, and we'll see how the East shakes out. I haven't sort of tried to put any of these teams in order. That will come in a few weeks once things settle down. We'll do some.
Yeah, I think it's too soon to worry about order.
Yeah. But, I think they'll be competitive. I mean, they have a great coach. We know that. They have Jimmy Butler, Adebayo, Justice Winslow, Maurice Harkless now. I think they're keeping Dragic. I don't know what else they got. They still have to do some work to get under the hard cap if they're doing this Butler deal. Maybe that means trading Olynyk. I think he might be the last casualty in that regard. So I think they can keep Dragic, and obviously that's important. But yeah, it should be. It'll be fun. I mean, it'll be interesting to see Butler now, back in running his own team again. And like I said, I'm excited for the next 12 months of Bam Adebayo's development.
Right. Let's shift to the Western Conference. Shoot, Golden State, I think, by anyone's measure, is worse than they were, compared to how they started this past season. Anytime you lose a player of Kevin Durant's caliber, there's only, two guys in the league you could add that would keep you at the same level. And LeBron plays it for the Lakers, and Kawhi will be playing elsewhere. So I don't think it's unfair to say that the Warriors are worse. Plus, not having Klay Thompson healthy for the start of their first season at the Chase Center certainly doesn't make them any more formidable than they would have been otherwise. I think I do like that the Warriors didn't lose Durant for nothing. But that D'Angelo Russell experiment is going to be fascinating to see how he and Steph coexist with Draymond, especially. Draymond's never been shy about letting a guy know about himself. You need only look back at he and Kevin Durant's spat on the bench this past season to know that. So Russell will have to be as mature and grown up as he's ever been to survive this season with Draymond in his face on a regular basis.
And no Andre Iguodala out there to sort of
that's another huge one.
Be the sort of the adult in the room. That's the other part of this Russell thing. In order to do it, they had to trade Iguodala, and they basically had to give up on retaining Looney because I assume he's going to get more money than they can afford from somebody else.
Right.
And so that's a huge sacrifice. I mean, I know Iguodala isn't the player he was just a few years ago and had just one more year on his deal. But like, it's a sacrificing of your culture. Like I said, in order to get something out of the Durant trade, Russell isn't necessarily a fit, but it's a contract now that they have, an asset that they have that they can maybe trade for down the line. Like, right. I think you do this D'Angelo Russell deal in order to trade him 6 months from now, a year from now.
Sure.
You just got to hope that there are enough teams around the league that believe he's worth $28 million a year, because I don't think that's a universal opinion. I don't think, Brooklyn was going to shell out, even if they weren't getting Kyrie Irving, shell out $28 million a year.
That's all right. Hartzell, put him on our list for reasonable or unreasonable time.
We shall see. Like, it'll be fun. Like, it'll be fun to see him and Curry playing together.
It's gonna be fascinating.
Yeah. So
to see what kind of system Steve Kerr will devise now.
Yeah, it's
without the turbo booster buttons he's had to push in recent years. No Clay to push right away. No KD to push that. You can't push that button when you need it. But it'll be an interesting watch just to see what they do. I think the Clippers shoe are same until we know what Kawhi does. I don't care about these other signings or whatever else they're doing. With Kawhi, clearly they're better. Without him, same.
Yeah, they lost Garrett Temple, which I don't think is too huge a deal from that playoff team. Obviously, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's development is a big part of who they are going forward, no matter what Kawhi Leonard decides.
He and Shamet both, right?
Yeah, it's true. Good point. Like, if Shamet can be a little bit more versatile, he's more of when he was with Philly, he was sort of a JJ Redick light, except that he doesn't have the JJ Redick skill of being able to like go on a dead sprint, catch the ball, and then shoot. Like, he had to be more of a standstill. So he's got to make himself even more of a threat than he already was. Still getting Lou Williams on $8 million a year is still just amazing. That contract I will put in the very, very, very reasonable category. And they still have Gallinari. I think they're solid. It might be difficult to overachieve as much as they did last year for a second year in a row if they don't get Kawhi Leonard. But if they get Kawhi Leonard, then they put them near the top of the Western Conference.
Right.
And like I said, I Gilgeous-Alexander's development is huge. He's got to be more of a scorer than he was this past year. He was just more of a fill in the blanks point guard, but didn't do much, a lot of anything. He just sort of held his own as a rookie, which is all you can ask for, really, from a rookie point guard. So his development is huge.
Huge offseason for a lot of those young players, and a lot of young players around the league. Young players being something that the Los Angeles Lakers no longer possess. They are the most top-heavy team in the entire league. When you start with LeBron and Anthony Davis, all you can do is smile. But when you run out of options after Kyle Kuzma, like we literally don't know who else is going to be a rotation player on that roster.
We saw a report after we started taping that they're going to get Troy Daniels on a minimum deal, basically. So that doesn't affect their cap space at all.
Doesn't affect what I just said either.
Right. Troy Daniels is a shooter and not much of anything else. Right. So he's not necessarily a starting shooting guard, which is something they don't have right now, nor do they have a starting point guard. And so, it is what it is. It's at least they've got a fourth guy on their roster. That's all.
Yeah. About that. I mean, when you're starting, when your roux is made up of LeBron and AD, you almost can't screw it up. I mean, there's got to be a way to construct a competitive team around two of the best, 5 or 6 players in the league. You got to be able to fill out a roster.
Right, but if they and if they were to get Kawhi Leonard, he takes up all your cap space, and then the only thing you have
minimums
to offer anybody is the room exception, and that's not much. So I don't think that's even enough to add like a Danny Green. And so there you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. Maybe you get some sort of veterans that are near the end of the career that are willing to take the minimum. But now, if you don't add Kawhi Leonard and you still have LeBron James and Anthony Davis and Kyle Kuzma, well, then now you have some money to spend on a Danny Green. But
you have to hope the Danny Greens of the world aren't all gone by then. Like,
yeah, it's true.
Depending on how long you have to wait.
Right. So, like when Reggie Bullock agreed to a deal with the Knicks, well, that was a piece that the Lakers could have used to bring back. So it's going to be tough to fill in those holes. Maybe there's a J.R. Smith comes on the market if the Cavs waive him at some point.
Melo's out there, baby. The rumors are hot.
The other thing is but Melo's the 4, and they have LeBron, Kyle Kuzma, and Anthony Davis who all play the 4, to some degree. So I don't know. It has to be guards. They need point guard. They need a ball handler. I thought Darren Collison would have been a perfect candidate for them, sort of on a mid-level market. But obviously he's gone, and so what else is there? The point guard market is tough. Maybe if they don't get Kawhi Leonard, they can absorb a point guard into their cap space and be a trade if somebody has one or a shooting guard even to spare. But we shall see. Maybe a Gordon Dragic, if Miami still needs to make that move. Maybe they don't. I
still think they're better. I still think they have clearly an opportunity to be much better.
Well, sure. But a lot depends on the health of LeBron. How does he rebound from that last season, which was obviously his worst season of his career as far as injuries and as far as, is he going to play defense? Obviously Anthony Davis will cover up for his defensive issues more than anybody they had last year, but still Anthony Davis isn't the most, I think can be a great defender, but still has lapses on that end of the floor. Good luck to Frank Vogel and just sort of making it all work.
They got to go find their own PJ Tucker type guy. They got to go find some dude who's a grimy, dirty work dude.
Patrick Beverly would have been great for them, but obviously he's going back to the Clippers. Yeah, a player like that is sort of what they need.
It'll be crucial for them.
A guard that doesn't need to handle the ball all that much, but can defend. Maybe Tony Allen can come out of retirement.
I don't even want to discuss the Phoenix Suns for what they're doing to my man Devin Booker till they get it right.
I don't know what
I don't know what they're doing.
They've made some confusing.
That's why we're not going to punish people by talking about teams like the Suns right now. I am interested in the Kings though. They've made enough interesting moves and they've got enough quality young players, and they've piqued my interest in terms of what I think they might be able to put on the floor this season. I don't know that I would have spent the kind of money that they did on a guy like Harrison Barnes, maybe.
Yes, that's the one I was talking about before.
Yeah, but some of the other things they've done I like, and I love the opportunity for Marvin Bagley and Fox and Giles and some of those young guys to get better and better with more opportunity.
Yeah, the Barnes thing just confuses me. I think he has proven that he's not a star of any sort. I don't know how much he moves the needle on either end of the floor, maybe a little bit defensively because he's long and athletic and can guard multiple positions. But I just do not see giving this dude $85 million if you have Bagley and Giles and even Bjelica as a placeholder for, until maybe Giles is ready to be a starter. Bjelica's on a reasonable contract, $7 million this year, $7 million non-guaranteed next year for 2021. And so the Barnes thing, I just don't get it. I really don't. It's a ton. Maybe 1 year as a placeholder type guy, but 4 years, $85 million is just. That's the one thing I will remain confused. And Ariza, we're not sure. I think Ariza fell off a lot last year. Maybe it's just because he got traded to a bad team and
True.
And wasn't motivated or whatever. but there's a little bit of risk in that move given his age and how much, like I said, it seemed he fell off. And then I love Corey Joseph, and I think he's a really good fit behind and at some points, at some times alongside De'Aaron Fox. But again, it's another team where it's like, all right, some decent moves, but let's see what Fox becomes, what Bogdan Bogdanovic turns into, how Bagley develops, how Giles develops. Those guys will really determine their ceiling, really.
Opportunity to be better is what I like.
Sure.
I at least need to see some light at the end of that tunnel for you as a team. Like, do you have an opportunity to be better than you were? And I think the Kings fall in the better potentially category. I don't know if I'd say the same thing about the Dallas Mavericks. What would you say?
Well, I think they have Kristaps Porzingis, who they didn't have last year. And if he comes back close to 100%, they gave him the extra time. He maybe could have been cleared near the end of last season, so they gave him the extra time. They added Seth Curry today. Doncic is only going to get better. So, they only lost Dirk Nowitzki, basically. But Porzingis and Doncic, it's those two guys, really. That's just, it's about those. And I love Porzingis. I think Porzingis will make them a better defensive team. He really made when he was healthy with New York in his last healthy season or last healthy half season, he was really an impact player defensively. Yeah. And so I think that will help. They haven't been a terrific defensive team the last few years. And then Doncic, he's just only going to get better. And I think pick and pop with Doncic and Porzingis is going to be deadly. And I really like Dwight Powell as a frontline complement to Porzingis, more a rim runner who's always, they've always played well with him on the floor the last couple of years. So, and I think his extension is in the reasonable category if we're going to continue with this theme. And then obviously Curry is a great complement to as a starting point guard alongside Doncic, who's going to be handling the ball most of the time. He's sort of a ideal fit.
Yeah, I love the Seth Curry pickup. I really do. I don't know what the Houston Rockets are doing, Shu, and I don't know that the Rockets know what they're doing. They literally could have just run it back with the exact same team and been in a great position to win the West next year.
Well, they might be running it back with the exact same team. They haven't exactly lost anybody. The problem is that they sort of went all in on this, or they had this, Jimmy Butler aspirations. And in doing that, they put Eric Gordon, Clint Capella, and PJ Tucker on the trade block. And now you're asking those three guys to come back and be all gung-ho about coming back for a contender? Or, are they going to understand it's just the business of the NBA? Or is that going to be an issue that these three guys, who are all critically important players for you, are now coming back to a team that was trying to trade them so it could get this other guy who's now going somewhere else?
Well, I also wonder, once guys know you don't have their long-term well-being in mind, that you would be willing to drop them in a moment for what you think is a better option or a better player, do you get the same guts for the greater good play out of them?
Yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to say. Like, how engaged are they going to be going forward with a team that was trying to trade them?
Yeah, I don't know. And Eric Gordon is a guy who's been in some difficult situations before in his career where, we've seen the best of him, I think, since he's been in the Rockets uniform. Whereas PJ Tucker strikes me as the kind of guy that he wouldn't care where he was playing. He's going to go all out. And Capella's so young, I don't know what that does to the psyche of a player who's as inexperienced as he is right now, in terms of, can you jolt his confidence back up to where it needs to be to get the very best out of him? It's just a weird situation, especially when you got a coach, who doesn't necessarily have the 100% support of the owner and potentially the front office. They got a lot of weird vibes coming out of the Rockets, program right now that, to me, almost felt like they jumped the gun. The way they lost to the Warriors in the second round of playoffs, they almost need to just go away and be quiet all summer, which I know is very difficult for Daryl Morey to do. When you see the league changing the way it does, he's going to have that itchy finger to do something. So, and you got an owner in Fertitta who's very sensitive to the, things that have been written about his team and written about him and how he's, managing things. I almost wish the Rockets would have done what James Harden does in the offseason, and that's basically vanish. And not participate in all the 24-hour drama that goes on with this league in the offseason.
Yeah, and there's still the whole Harden-Chris Paul issue that, Morey and CP tried to put the kibosh on shortly after it came out.
Would have helped if James Harden had said something. Just from public, for public consumption, it would have been helpful.
Yeah, so they're sort of on pace to bring everybody back. Maybe they still have some frontline issues to work out as far as their free agents and stuff. But if they do bring everybody back, it's going to be a fascinating chemistry experiment. As bored as we might be with the Rockets and who they are, and the fact that they've sort of stayed stationary through this postseason or this offseason where every other team is making moves. They're still going to be fascinating to watch just because of everything we've just talked about.
The Memphis Grizzlies, I think, are going to be clearly not the same team with a new coach, all new pieces. We don't know which ones stay or go. I'm going to mark them down in the worst category, not with a flaming arrow, but just by virtue of circumstance.
They traded Mike Conley. They traded their best player. Yeah,
they lost the backbone of their organization in both Gasol and Conley. In the last however many months, it's going to be difficult to be better. Or even stay the same.
To see what happens with Iguodala, though.
It's John Morant's show now. He's the face.
Right. No, I'm just not even with the future of the Grizzlies. I'm just talking about the future of Andre Iguodala, and if he gets a buyout and is now available to go wherever he wants on a minimum or
Lakers
on a few. It's possible.
Who was his agent when he first came in the league?
Oh, Rob Pelinka. Yeah.
Don't overlook it. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there. Just throwing that out there. Throwing that bone out there to the masses. My favorite offseason by far, draft, free agency included, is our man Griff. He killed it. He hired Swing Cash, which is his first major home run move, hiring one of my favorite people in basketball. But then to get Zion and to get all that they got from the Lakers and then to kill it in not only on draft night, but in free agency. I think JJ Redick is a masterstroke for that team.
Yeah, on a quote, a reasonable deal.
Yeah,
26 million or something like that for 2 years is that dude. People, I think we underestimate the impact that he made in Philadelphia, just how important his spacing and his movement, his off-ball movement was with that Philadelphia team.
I love J.J. Redick's, and Griff is big on this, so that's why it didn't surprise me. I love the fiber he puts in the locker room, too, which I would have never said that when he was I'm like most people, I would have run J.J. Redick over in traffic when he was at Duke. I could, he's one of those Dukies that you just want to choke out because if you're not a Duke fan, you're a Duke hater, basically. But he has grown on me tremendously during his time in the league. I think he's probably a better player than I thought he was, but maybe even a better person, like a better teammate and dude than I thought he was or would be at the NBA level. And I think he'll do wonders for that locker room.
And he'll be an important mentor for Brandon Ingram.
Yes.
Dookie that needs to sort of recover from his Lakers experience and get his career moving forward. Hopefully his blood clot issue isn't an issue going forward. And yeah, it's a interesting team. Maybe a playoff team. Drew Holiday, JJ Redick, Ingram, Williamson, Derek Favors at center, acquired in a trade. Then you got a second unit with Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart.
If they can keep LeVar Ball out of the Mardi Gras ball, they're good. They just got to be able to keep the distractions to a minimum because they got too much going on, too many quality young players that are going to need for the organization to be kind of their sanctuary from all the hype, because there's going to be a lot of hype with Zion. You know that. It's going to bring a different kind of attention,
You know my favorite move that Griff made this summer? He drafted the first Virginia Tech first-round pick in like 20, 30 years maybe.
Right.
My man, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who will probably be like a third or fourth string guard on that team.
Or he could be like his cousin and shock everybody. You never know.
Yeah, it's true.
You never know.
But he'll be fighting for playoff time or playing time with that group. But they're fascinating, and I think Griff did really well with the cap space that he had in acquiring Favors, Redick, and then obviously the Lakers trade was huge. I mean, they have assets too. I mean, like if another star becomes available, a disgruntled star becomes available in the trade market, there's not many teams better set up to make a trade than the Pelicans are with all their draft picks and young players. As far as this season, obviously we don't know what kind of a player Zion Williamson is going to be as a rookie. If he's going to be able to shoot, if he's going to be able to do much off the dribble. Until we see that, I don't know how, it might be difficult to forecast them for this coming season.
I remember how I felt when Blake Griffin finally got a chance to play, which was his second year, not his rookie season.
Mm-hmm.
If Zion has the same kind of vibe that Blake had as a rookie, like during his monster rookie year where you stayed up late at night just to see what kind of highlights he was going to put in, that'll be a victory. He's, because I don't think he has to be a home run as a rookie. And,
no,
I just think he needs to have more ups than downs and to battle through whatever adversity he's going to deal with in terms of positional issues.
Yeah,
It'll be interesting to see what they do to shape his body and to keep him, at the size that he needs to be effective in the league. And then I'll be curious to see what he can do defensively in terms of how many positions can he guard in the league.
Yeah. Spacing, if you have a front line of Ingram, Williamson, and Favors, spacing is an issue, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's why Redick is so critical for them. But obviously they're lacking in just sort of straight perimeter shooting. But they have plenty of time to sort of work things out as they build around this sort of young group.
The Spurs are kind of a mystery to me right now in terms of what they're going to be. They got some issues to deal with, young players coming back to the fold, and DeJounte Murray. I won't say they're a playoff lock, but they probably should be, given what they have coming back. But I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of them right now. Shoot.
I think they're probably in the same boat as they were last year. I just really like the Murray and Derek White backcourt as a project going forward. I think that could be a really special backcourt going forward. It's just a matter of having the DeRozan and Aldridge and Rudy Gay and those guys around as for 2 more years. Is there there's a sort of a push and pull with present versus future. But I think Murray and White can also be good players in the present. It's just I'd be curious as if they as they go forward, if they make moves towards the future, or if they're still just trying to keep Pop competitive while he's still around.
Right. Perhaps the most competitive division in the league outside of the Atlantic, the Northwest, with Denver to me headlining. I really like what Denver could be, even though I thought the money they gave Jamal Murray was, that's a lot. But even with that, I mean, I really like what Denver's working with moving forward. Do you have any reasons or any reservations about them having another top 2-3 finish in the West?
No, and I think, I hopefully I don't think it will be. I don't think the Jamal Murray extension will look as bad as the Andrew Wiggins extension looked like less than a year after it was signed. Because, he can obviously do a little bit more than Andrew Wiggins offensively, especially. I'm fascinated to see Michael Porter Jr. I've spoken to you this before. I watched him at the rookie photo shoot last year, and this was maybe right after he had back surgery or something. And he looks like a stud, first of all. He just looks like a prototypical NBA forward, what you're looking for.
6'10", Albie Shore.
Right? Yeah, like it's just and it looks like he could be a versatile and athletic forward, which is something every team wants.
Yeah.
And I was watching him shoot NBA threes at this rookie photo shoot, and he was like matching Trae Young shot for shot. And that's Trae Young, like, who was second in Rookie of the Year voting.
He's his old AAU point guard too, by the way.
And this dude hasn't played yet, and he didn't play all, like, that was a year ago, as the Nuggets were putting him on ice for a year. So I'm fascinated by that. I think Jokic will get better. Like, I don't think we've seen the best of him. I like the idea of keeping Millsap around for one more year, and I think. The guards could only get better. I mean, Gary Harris, Murray, Beasley, Monte Morris, all young and improving. And so if they're healthy, I don't see why, as it stands, why aren't they, they're the best team in the West that didn't lose anybody, right? So why can't they be the best team in the West this year, barring, Kawhi Leonard going to either the Lakers or the Clippers?
They got some great experience, even though they lost a Game 7 on their home floor to Portland. They got invaluable experience, in the postseason last year. Kind of a first blush for their young guys in that pressure-packed, environment. They'll be better for it this year. And again, like you said, being able to redshirt Michael Porter Jr. So whatever you get out of him this year, just as a role player off the bench, the potential is scary, of what he could become, how good he could be. You add him to that mix, starting with Jokic and Murray, who are kind of their, 1A and 1B right now. Jokic being the number one guy and Murray being number two. They got a lot of potential. Keeping Tim Connelly was big, because there were teams that would have loved to have snatched away, the guy who's in charge of their front office. So kudos to the Nuggets, and give them credit, Shu, for not panicking after losing the way they did. A lot of teams would have freaked out, and done something crazy. They did not. I think they understood where they were, going from not making the playoffs the year before to being a top 2 seed this year and getting as far as they did. There's a natural evolution if you do it the right way, and if you're doing it the way they're doing it, where you take some lumps, get back up with that, basically the same group, and come back and swing at it again. So good for them. Utah's the other team in that division to me that looks like, and I know you guys were high, a lot of you guys were high on them last year. I wasn't as high on Utah last season as some of you and some other guys we know around the league were. I'm convinced now. I mean, I think with Conley, I really love the fit of a point guard like that with Donovan Mitchell. I think Joe Ingles needs to have a bounce back / breakout season. And no favors means they'll have a different dynamic in their front court. But you got Rudy Gobert, you got Defensive Player of the Year back there anchoring everything. Now they look like they might be ready, to me, to take that next step.
Yeah, I like seven deep. I like the Jazz. I like you got to love their top 7 guys: Conley, Mitchell, Bogdanovich, Ingles, and Gobert. And then off the bench right now they have Ed Davis and Royce O'Neal. After that, there's a lot of questions, and so, but they just have a lot of like Conley and Mitchell off the dribble. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. And then Ingles can even handle the ball and play a little pick and roll as well. And Bogdanovich as mostly as a shooter, but also a guy that can, he can post up smaller wings as well. They have a lot more offensive creation than they had, just a couple months ago. So that is huge. Obviously, they lose a little bit of versatility in trading Crowder. And then Favors. And so, but getting Ed Davis to be the backup to Gobert is big. I think that's a really important piece to sort of that keeps them from being sort of feeling empty up front after Gobert.
I'm heartbroken that Portland had to part ways with Myers Leonard, given the way he finished the playoffs. But I thought keeping Rodney Hood was very important for them. Having that kind of dude who can come off the bench and score the way he can. Mo Harkless, to me, and Al Farouk were valuable pieces for them. But covering that team in the playoffs, I didn't feel like Terry Stotts trusted them the way you need to get the best out of them in that setting. I think Zach Collins is an up-and-coming young player, so this is going to provide him an opportunity to kind of blossom a little bit. And then Dame, nobody's talking about it, but to me, you talk about the number one winner in the summer of 2019. Go ahead and look at the number on Dame Lillard's extension, on that robust extension he signed.
First guy to be right. He's on right now, set to be the first guy to earn $50 million in a
$50 million man. Bow down and salute Dame Lillard. But he and CJ McCollum were so locked in and professional in Portland's run to the conference finals. I know there have been people who are, well, you're going to have to break them up at some point. I'm not sure you can win with two guards that size. CJ 6'3", Dame listed at 6'3", but not as tall as CJ. I think you can win big with those two guys. I just think you got to have the exact right group around them. And you expressed some reservations earlier about Hassan Whiteside. I agree. I don't know that Whiteside is my pick, to have in the middle holding it down until they get Nurkic back, which we have no idea when Nurkic is going to be healthy and ready to play.
Right.
But I like the dynamic they have everywhere else right now. It's just in the middle, and perhaps they got some young talent ready to play off their bench. Anthony Simons, Gary Trent Jr., Nasir Little will be a rookie. They've got some interesting pieces that make them a different type of team in terms of the athleticism and size of some of these young guys. It's just a matter of how they're going to be ready to play.
Yeah, and I think, with Lillard, McCollum, Hood, even Bazemore a little to an extent, they have enough guys that can handle the ball so that when two of the star guards sit, or one of the star guards is on the bench, they have enough off the dribble. A lot of people are high on Nasir Little as the 25th pick. Obviously I don't know much about him. I'll be curious to see him if he plays summer league. He'll be sort of a guy to keep an eye on in summer league, just as a guy who could be an important piece for a very good team as a rookie. And we'll see. I think Jake Layman, he's a restricted free agent, is an important piece to bring back for them. Although they are well above the luxury tax, so I don't know how much they'll be willing to spend if somebody gives Layman a decent offer.
Right. They just have an interesting dynamic to them. I can't think of a more sound backcourt duo in terms of how healthy they are going into the season and how accomplished they are. There are not many in the league that have done as much and can do as much as Dame and CJ that are going to start the season healthy and upright, but they have those question marks elsewhere that do make you, give you reason to pause. But Terry Stotts seems to be in a good spot too. It's not like there's any uncertainty about what the direction is. Neil O'Shea's locked in. So it should look like continued ascent for the Trailblazers. I don't know if that means getting back to conference finals level or not, but just in terms of how competitive they'll be, I think they're in a good space right now. I don't know if I can say the same thing about Minnesota, Shu, because I don't know enough about what they got going on right now. They clearly seem like they want to part ways with Wiggins.
Yeah, don't know where that's
What are you building? What are you building in Minnesota?
I think they were hoping for D'Angelo Russell, and they struck out in that regard. And, there was all this whispers, they had a taker for Wiggins, or they had a taker for some sort of contract that they were able to get rid of. Maybe it was Jeff Teague if they were going for D'Angelo Russell, but no signs of that happening. And so they traded Dario Saric, who was, I guess a disappointment after he was traded, just wasn't the same player in Minnesota as he was in Philly.
Yes, it got to you. I know how much you loved him before he got to Philly. It's like,
yeah. And, the good thing is they'll have a healthy Robert Covington back, and obviously losing him for a huge chunk of the season last year was a tough blow to their playoff chances. And then, is Jarrett Culver a starting small forward in this league right now? Maybe we're going to find out because, it's weird because they have Towns, who I think is ready to win now. Wiggins, who just has been a disappointment. And then they've got some interesting young pieces in Okogie, Culver, Keta Bates, Diop. And so, like, are those guys ready to play for this team to continue winning, or do they have to sort of pivot with what they're doing? T comes off the books next year, but what do they have? What are they going to replace him with if they're ready to move on? This is another team that just has holes up. Like, they only have, I'm just looking, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys under contract basically as we speak. And so this is a team that still needs to find some pieces and doesn't have cap space to do it. They basically have the mid-level exception, and that's it. So, but
it's obviously, they got
a lot of questions.
Gerson Rosas up there putting his own stamp on the organization. I'll be curious to see how he shapes things moving forward, because they'll have a clear vision about what they want to be. It's just a matter of how you get to it.
Yeah, somehow getting off of Wiggins' contract would give them more direction, but doing so would probably mean parting with some draft picks, and I don't know if that's a better idea, going forward.
Last and certainly not least, the Oklahoma City Thunder. On everybody's mind last summer when free agency kicked off and Paul George doesn't take a meeting with the hometown Lakers and decides, I'm sticking it out with Russ. We're going to do this thing in OKC. My confidence continues to wane in their chances of being championship caliber team. I don't see it, Shu. And I love Paul George, and I know how good Russ is. I know what kind of star power they have, but to me, they're the cautionary tale for a team that has, 2 anchor stars. And then you look at the supporting cast and say, why is this not working? Like, why? They got these 2 guys that you should be able to build around no matter what, and it's not working.
I mean, it's just a case of you have this superstar who is just an otherworldly talent who it's tough to build, who with the guys around him, you're not getting, it's not a situation where the sum or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Like, you have Russell Westbrook, who's an incredible talent and can do and can win you games, but over 82 games or even over a playoff series, he's not necessarily bringing out the best in everybody else around him, just with the way he plays offense, and maybe the way he takes some possessions off defensively. Everybody would want to have, every team in the league would love to have Paul George. Yes. Almost every team would love to have Steven Adams.
Yes.
A terrific player.
Yes.
But this is a team that's going to be paying a ton of luxury tax again this year for what looks like, middle of the road playoff team in the West, but just doesn't have what it takes to get forward. Now, maybe with Golden State taking a step backward with some, questions basically about every team in the West, maybe they can put things together, but I think it's going to require a little something different from Russell Westbrook. Maybe just him being a better shooter, maybe him, being more of a real point guard. I don't know if that's possible, but I won't count them out. And in regard to contending in the West, it's like, you said, like it doesn't seem like they can really fulfill their potential with the way they're constructed. And I thought there were whispers about maybe moving off of Adams, and
Robertson,
to get under the tax line and just sort of salvage that. But it's tough. If they're in a tough situation and they're paying a ton of tax for a team that isn't, seems to have a ceiling at 4 or 5 in the West.
Yeah, they're not a group that looks like they're going to overachieve. I mean, they may be just what they are, which is, being a playoff team, there's nothing wrong with that. But like you said, if there's a ceiling on what you can do as a group, I mean, some hard choices are going to have to be made at some point.
There's some hope in that maybe, Terrence Ferguson and Hamidou Diallo can take steps forward this year. But like I said,
Grant too. I mean, that Grant I thought was a quality, gave him quality minutes.
Right. And they've done well, I think, with player development with those guys. But do those guys have a ceiling individually with the fact that they're playing alongside Russell Westbrook?
Right. Interesting. Well, we probably went longer than we should have or supposed to, but so what? It's the off season. We're only coming to you once a week. So we got to get it all in. Shu, I know you're going to take a little bit of a breather and, get away from this thing for a minute, but we will be back next week. We'll check back in and see if Kawhi's made up his mind by then. This is the most Kawhi Leonard thing ever, by the way, to let everybody else knock out their free agent business like immediately. And Kawhi's like, send me a letter and once I get it, I'll send you my response back and you'll know what my decision was. I mean, kudos to you. Don't change Kawhi Leonard. Don't change.
There's a load management joke to be made there, but I'm not sure exactly what it is.
I'm getting out of the joke business right now. Be sure to subscribe to Hang Time on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you leave a glowing review. We appreciate you sticking around, rocking with us as always. Again, thanks to John Schumann and Sean Powell for holding it down in my absence. I apologize, but sometimes, life gets in the way of all the fun we have around here on the Hang Time Podcast. Shu, enjoy your few days away. And everybody else, thanks for listening. And we'll see you right here next time on the Hang Time Podcast. The Hang Time Podcast.